Welcome to the Seeing in the Dark podcast, the podcast for new ways of leading and doing business. No more separation between money, power, and leadership, and being a deeply spiritual human being. Seeing in the Dark is about walking paths that have not been walked before and truly making a change in a world in which old ways are crumbling. My name is Nicole Nima Costeres, CEO of a multiple six-figure soul-based business, and here to take you into the mysteries of purpose, power, intuition, and soul-based leadership. May you embody your own unique essence so deeply that your vibration naturally teaches, inspires, and assists others. Let's dive in. Welcome to this week's episode where I sit in conversation together with Dusah Wiseman, also known as the Serpent Goddess. We met during a co-creation, a beautiful project by Katja Nova called The Vault, a project that was almost like a school that was teaching women around wealth, and over 45 women in wealth came together, and Dusah and I were two of the teachers in this project. The moment I met her, I could feel this groundedness, a certain calmness, a certain embodiment of whatever she is teaching, and it's inspired me. So I reached out to her and asked her if she wanted to share her story and her experience with Kundalini energy, with her Kundalini Awakening, but also her connection to Serpentine energy. It's a conversation that I feel inspired to have with a few different women over this coming period, because I think it's a topic that should be shared more about. It's a process also that I feel we should not go through alone, the process of Kundalini Awakening. And so as this second episode in the series around Kundalini Awakening, I am sitting here with the beautiful Dusah Wiseman, mystic and mentor and expert on Kundalini Awakening. Enjoy. All right, everyone. I welcome you to this week's episode together with Dusah Wiseman. And Dusah and I met in a really beautiful project that we both were a part of recently with Katja Nova in The Vault. And one of the things that immediately drew me towards you, Dusah, was just a certain calm groundedness. And I also, when I heard you speak, there was this calm wisdom that came from you that immediately pulled me in with curiosity. So I'm super happy to welcome you into this week's episode.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I definitely felt your energy as well. So it's an honor to be here.
Yeah. I feel really curious because your name on Instagram is Serpent Goddess. So my first curiosity is, what was your journey from Dusah Wiseman to Serpent Goddess? Like, what happened there?
It's pretty much like it chose me. So I would say 2012 was pretty much when my real big spiritual awakening happened. However, I started getting into yoga perhaps like in 2006, 2007. I was working at a law firm. It's crazy because I had so many different jobs leading up to that. I was actually in art school. And then while I was in art school, I started working for this law firm. And one of the ladies there, she was like, "Oh, I'm doing hot yoga. You should start doing hot yoga." And so I started doing it, but it was from a very just superficial, we're going to sweat and detox, have glowing skin and become more flexible. However, as I was in there, I've always had this innate feeling to want to go and get ancient wisdom, to find out the source of things. I don't know, perhaps it's my grandmother who used to always watch Bruce Lee movies growing up, but I was like this inner warrior in me that just wanted to know the ancient source. And I remember being in the hot yoga class and thinking there has to be more than just this. I feel like there's a deeper spiritual connection. I just intuitively knew that because I grew up in the ghetto. There were no yoga studios. There wasn't any meditation. And so I just had that hunch just from being in that session. I'm like, I want to know more. And so I did my research and did my digging, but it wasn't right away that I got into it. I just kind of eased into it with YouTube. I was just barely scratching the surface. And then in 2012, I had just had my daughter and I felt like I was literally losing my mind. I remember driving to the law firm. I was dropping my son off at childcare, and getting ready, and this is while I was still pregnant, and I'm driving, and I had been at the law firm for about like 5 years at the time, and it's like I was on autopilot, but I kept passing by like the job. I'm driving, and I'm like just so used to just going the usual route, but I passed it up. And then I got scared because it felt like something else took over the wheel. I'm like, why did I not just pull into my job? And it was my job to open up the office, to greet new visitors. And I just completely bypassed it, which is totally not my character. And that's how I knew something was up. And I just pulled over and I just started crying on the side of the road. And I'm like, I need help because I'm losing my mind. I was with a partner that wasn't aligned. His family was just overbearing. And I just really felt like alone because all of my family's in Illinois. And I just didn't know what to do. I just knew that I couldn't continue that way. And so it's so crazy. There were a lot of synchronicities that happen. There's always, I feel like, these little pieces of treasure that are egging you on and telling you, here, go there, do this. And looking back, they were always there. And my partner at that time, he would always look at something called War Star hip hop. I hated that because it was just filled with nonsense. It was just like, useless knowledge, or not even knowledge. It was just useless content to distract you. And he was trying to show me some video. I was so unbothered, not even paying attention. However, as he walked away, there was this ad and there was this guru right there. And I was immediately drawn into its eyes. And I'm just like, and I clicked the video and I just go down this binge of just like watching video after video after video. And it just made so much sense. I'm just like, it was logic. There was no religion involved. It was just pure logic. And it answered so many of my questions. And then I just went like just scanning this guru, just like looking for everything I could find. And I found this book. It was called Midnight with the Mystics. And this woman, she was like narrating the book, but also in conversations with the guru, she mentioned everything she was going through. And it was very similar to where I was. She was a single mother, feeling like, she was not on the path she wanted to be. She knows she wanted something. However, she didn't know what that was. And that was me. Here I am in art school, but also working at a law firm. It wasn't it. I didn't want to be an attorney. And I just, what's funny? Originally, why I moved to Atlanta was to be a rapper.
Really?
So random. But that's because my older brother used to rap and I just did. It came easy. Really, I was a poet and that was my way of expressing it. But I wasn't in love with that. So that's what's funny how I even landed up to Atlanta. So I'm reading this and she's telling me about her story and how this program really transformed her life. And so I'm like, oh, well, I have to do this. And then I look it up and they were going to be in Atlanta like the very next month. So I signed up immediately. I'm like, I have to do this. Mind you, this is after I had already been on the search for authentic yoga and meditation. I stumbled upon some cults and different things like that. And I'm like, this is not it. I always knew what was it and what wasn't, perhaps because of my upbringing and having to protect myself just around all the violence and things like that. I've been able to call bullshit like a mile away. And so I go there and I go to this experience and I didn't even really know what to expect because they weren't telling us. They were just like, okay, do this practice, do that practice. They're teaching us this yoga. And throughout the whole time, I kept questioning. I do these little silly games, I used to with the universe. Maybe I still do. But I would say things like, if this guru was the real deal, then let him make eye contact with me. Now, there were about, I don't know, I'm so bad with like visually seeing the numbers. But if I had to guess, there are probably like 350 people there. So I'm naming something that's outlandish just to, see if it works. And so he has us close our eyes. We're doing this meditation. And then as we open our eyes, he's standing directly in front of me, staring me in my eye and even using me as an example. So I'm like, okay, that's beyond eye contact. Okay. But it still wasn't enough for me. I've always been a skeptic. And so, which is beautiful, you want to question everything. Don't accept anything unless it feels like truth to you. And that's how I was. And throughout the whole thing, I kept saying things like that. We went outside to play soccer on a break. And I'm like, if he's the real deal, let him kick the ball to me. And instantaneously, almost before I could even finish the thought, he kicked the ball to me. And these sorts of things kept happening throughout the whole thing, which was kind of blowing my mind because I'm like, is he in my head? And how is he hearing these thoughts? And it's happening. And then I'm also getting these confirmations because I keep saying, if he's the real deal, let this happen. And so we get to the final. There was a 4-day event. And on the last day, he says, okay, this is the initiation part. And I don't want you to be alarmed. Some people might scream. Some people might cry. Some people might make animal noises. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, here's the catch, because I grew up like in a Christian household and we'd go to church and there'd be like these, not every prophet is false, but I got a chance to experience a lot of false prophets who'd say, okay, you're going to be instantaneously healed, or this is going to happen. And I never witnessed a miracle. So I'm thinking like, all right, here we go. I don't believe this guy. And then he starts doing the chant and doing the initiation. And all of a sudden my body is like whoosh. It's like pulsating back and forth. And I could feel this energy being released from me. And it didn't feel bad. It felt just amazing. And then this quote unquote good energy being imparted into me. And I was like, wow, that's it. I don't know what that was, but I felt something, and tears are coming out my eyes, tears of bliss and gratitude. And I'm like, I don't know what that was, but that is exactly what I've been searching for. And then that became the blueprint. And a lot of the practices and teachings he was having us do were quite difficult for me to start off with because, I wasn't used to doing all these intense breath works and different things. And everyone there is questioning and asking things like, well, I can't do this. And the practice had to be exactly 21 minutes. You weren't to use a timer. You were just to follow the practices along. And before long, you would notice that it's exactly 21 minutes. So the logical mind wants to figure it out, right? It's like, well, how is this possible? I can't do this breath work. And, and he's like, don't worry, just do the practice and all of these things will just beautifully unfold for you. And I remember watching a demonstration where he had a student that was demonstrating one of the breathing techniques and they were vibrating and their eyes were kind of rolling up in their head. I'm just like, wow, what is that? And not knowing I was witnessing the Kundalini experience and that first initiation was indeed a Kundalini experience. It was just like the tip of it. It hadn't fully awakened, but I got a chance to experience that. And so I'm doing the practice, I'm doing the breathing technique that they were doing. I'm like, my body's not shaking. My body is not vibrating like that, but I just sat with it. I kept listening when he said to just, do the practice. And before long, all these sorts of things will happen. And sure enough, I kept doing the practice. And then it became this thing to where my body would just start shaking and vibrating and just moving all over the place. And it felt, quite frankly, initially kind of felt addicting because it was like this exhilarating energy that just flew all over my body. But I didn't quite understand it. I didn't know what was happening. I knew it wasn't a bad thing. I knew that there was nothing wrong with me health-wise. And so I just kept surrendering and allowing myself to explore that. And that's one thing that I've always prided myself in doing is becoming the vessel. Whenever I'm in a space, it doesn't matter if I've learned it before, if I've heard it before, I always try to remain the student. I'm always the student and allowing myself to be the vessel for whatever wants to come through so that I don't miss anything, with the ego being present. And I've always done that.
I love that you say that. I love
Yeah,
this.
it's so important, I think, because we have to also remember too, when you start to tap into the Kundalini experience and feel that Kundalini energy, it becomes very empowering. You get a taste of power. You're in direct connection with source. And in order to remain humble and having that connection, we have to always be the student. We have to always separate the ego from the experience and just say, what wants to come through me? What wants to flow through me? In yoga, we hold our hands upwards when we're ready to receive something. And so I always keep that in mind. If I'm in a space where I know the energy is immaculate and I'm learning from someone that I truly admire, I'm allowing my body to be open. I'm allowing my hands to be open and ready to receive that. It's a long story on how Serpent Goddess became. I hope you are still listening.
It's a beautiful one.
That was the first taste. And I can recall times where I'm just listening to music and all of a sudden, I'm up out of my body and I'm traveling and my body is just, my spirit is somewhere else. And to be quite honest, I didn't really have anyone to ask. And I never really quite asked what that is. I just knew that it was okay and it was good. And one thing led after another. I was able to finally venture away from that bad relationship. It happened to be that the more I got into my spirituality, it kind of irritated their inner demons. And I think that's important for people to understand when they're on this spiritual path, that as long as you're staying true to you and doing what's right for you, sometimes people might drop out of your life. And
Yes.
I really, it was kind of hard to digest at first. However, it's beautiful to think that we kind of create this beautiful shield around ourselves to where it's like those who are not operating at the right vibration, they won't be able to kind of penetrate that, and those who aren't able to rise up and to evolve in their own special way, because we have our own individual journeys and it's not a race. However, if they're not willing to accept you in that space or evolve in that way, then they'll naturally just fall off,
Yes.
And so I had to deal a lot with that. A lot of even close friends, we just kind of separated. And however, I was lonely. I wasn't lonely, it was just something that sort of naturally happened. And
was
so
it difficult for you?
it was difficult initially. Relationship was just difficult in the essence that I knew I had to do it. I think the practice allowed it to be more easeful for me because my compass became sharp. And it's like, all right, this makes me feel amazing. This calms my energy. This is helping me deal with trauma. If this person is against what I'm doing, then they're not for me. So it gave me that extra boost. And also it held me through the grief process, because whether a relationship is good for you or not, there's still going to be grief. There's going to be grief of you kind of releasing your old self, So we're going to be grieving ourselves as we evolve. And even right now, I'm in a period of grief because I'm reinventing and evolving to a new level right now. And so
exactly. I feel curious before you continue, because I love your story, but otherwise I might forget to check in, because you said you met this guru and you were doing the practices. What type of practices are those? Are you talking about Kundalini Yoga? Was it specifically focused on Kundalini, these practices?
No, so it wasn't focused on Kundalini at all, but it was classical Hatha yoga. And Hatha is a path that can lead to your Kundalini awakening as well. So yeah, it was the ancient form of Hatha yoga, where we did a lot of different kriyas and preparing the body to receive these higher states of awareness. And then there was a direct transmission from guru to student, which I really resonate with that. I feel like we're becoming a culture that is tapping into their individuality to where they don't feel like they need that. And it's true, you don't need it. However, I cherish that kind of connection because I don't know, it's just maybe a past life or just the ancient part of me. I know what it is. I like finding the shortcuts. I like finding the shortcut way of doing things. And so that was a direct way to just kind of like leap ahead and get a taste, that peek behind the veil. The term guru is actually the dispeller of darkness, to go from the unseen to the seen. And so this was a way of me getting a glimpse of what's on the other side. Now, I could have been just figuring it out on my own and just running into another cult and finding different things, which I never joined, but, they're there. And however, this experience allowed me to catapult and to see what's possible, sort of like plant medicine. And that's what I was getting to next, too.
I feel so curious, because like you said, you were alone in your Kundalini awakening and not necessarily having that support around you, or at least not immediately. And I recognize this a lot. So for the first 3 years, my Kundalini awakening happened spontaneously. So I wasn't doing any practices. And I think actually it happened also partly to trauma through a herniated disc in my lower back. Wow. And so it was after... That's where it started. Yeah. And that's where the energy starts.
That's where the Kundalini. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So amazing.
So I had a very big hernia and I lost all sensation in my whole pelvis. Like my leg wasn't working anymore on the right side. My whole pelvic area was just numb or super highly sensitive. And that was around that time where my body just started shaking for 3 months. And I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know deep inside I can trust it, but I couldn't find anyone to support me or to explain to me or to help me understand what was happening. So for me, it was also an opportunity to really trust my own body, to trust
Mhm.
also my intuitive sense of what is going on. And when I hear you speak, I hear something similar. Like you said,
Exactly.
like I just trusted what happened. I didn't know exactly what happened, but I trusted what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think you can't define the spiritual with the logical mind. Even if you try to explain what's happening, it's just like, it's just something that is. And yeah, to be able to surrender into that. And that's such a beautiful story that you just shared. The fact
Mm,
that because it can happen in so many different ways. There isn't just like this one recipe for everyone. And the fact that yours came from an injury that's at the base of the spine, that's exactly where
yes.
Kundalini starts for everyone. So it rises
Yes.
up. So that's incredible. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and one thing that I love about your story that I also can relate with so much is that the moment that starts to awaken, everything in our life can change, right? So
Yeah.
for me, it was also the ending of my job as a
Mm,
social worker, ending of my relationship, my house. I shaved my head, sold my car, sold all my things, and I went to India, but also in the process lost friends that I was friends with for over 20 years.
right?
Yeah. So,
Same
like, how is
thing.
that for you? Because you said you basically drove by your job and you didn't go in, but
Yeah.
then your relationship ended. So, what ended for you in that whole process of awakening?
I'm trying to think if I even have a friend in my circle right now from that time period. And I have acquaintances, like the lady who first introduced me to yoga, but
Mm.
we talk like once every 3 years, 2 years. It's not frequently. So pretty much everything. I lost a lot. I lost my house. Even after the experience happened, I still experienced a great deal of loss because it's so funny. I can laugh at it now, but I also remember that also these different gods, goddesses, orishas, they started to visit me around this time. And
Mm.
some of the first ones were Shiva and Kalima, Lakshmi eventually, but the first part was that very much creator, destroyer energy. And so
Mm.
things were just being like ripped apart from me, but they were for my best and highest good. And so as I was firstly getting new into this practice, I started grabbing the tools, like the Moldavite and all these different things and all these different crystals, and I had all these different altars. And I experienced so many times where I lost everything, be it a fire, be it from a storage that I couldn't get access to, where I lost all these things. And I feel like that kept happening to me to show me not to rely on the external, to
Yeah.
rely on my internal. So now I still have a couple of crystals, a couple of things, but it's nowhere near like how when I first started my journey. And I think a lot of people, when they first start out, they do that. They grab a bunch of different things. I just want to let you know, let anyone who's listening know that you don't have to reach externally to find the truth, the wisdom that lies within you. These things can help you to set the stage, to kind of prepare the body to know, okay, now we're about to go inward. It can kind of serve as this reminder. However, we never want to rely on those things. And
Mm.
so a lot of things were just like being removed from my life. So I lost maybe 2 places that I stayed in, cars, relationships, friendships. My circle that I have right now is nowhere near what it was then.
Mm.
And I even during the process, I even had death in the family. I lost a real close cousin that was close to me. So there were a lot of different things that were shifting and happening. It's just you had no choice but to surrender, It's like I'm not sure
Yeah.
what's going on here. However, this is keeping me grounded. This is keeping me centered. It's funny too, because it's like you kind of, as you're shifting into the next level of who you are, there are still old parts of you that can kind of like bring you back and forth.
Yeah.
And as I was noticing as I was evolving, then I'd start to try and date someone and they were attached to the older version of me and they would
Mm.
like make me collapse. And next thing you know, I'm forgetting my practices and I'm falling off. And then it's like, all right, the moment I get back on the mat though, everything comes to a still. Everything becomes calm again. And then I'm like, all right, I need to, and sure enough, as I'm doing my practice, I'm not attracting those types. I'm not attracting those kinds. It's just that when we kind of fall off it, that I started to realize that happening. So I'm like, all right, this needs to be a priority because this is like,
Mm.
excuse my language. There's this term called fuckboy. that people used to say a
Yes.
lot. And so to me, my practice was like my fuckboy repellent because they were not coming anywhere close. It would come a point where I'm like, wow, because I would be used to people trying to talk to me and get my number and things. But as I was getting deep into my practices, that wasn't happening much. And I was like, wow, okay. And at first I was like, well, I know I'm glowing even more. I'm becoming even more attractive. So it can't be that. It's just that the people weren't vibrating at the right level. And the people that I started to attract once I was on that path were just so much better. Like it was just, it was so beautiful.
Beautiful. I feel curious, what were one of the maybe one or two things that helped you the most in this process of letting go so many things? Because I can see in my life looking back, there was this force, almost like a volcanic force that was just driving me
Yeah.
forward. There was just no other way, right? But there were some things that were so difficult for me, like probably the most difficult one was leaving behind my dog when I went traveling for 7 months. And I had to bring him to a friend of my mom, and he would live there for a while. And I remember crying for 3 weeks because I felt so much guilt leaving him behind. And that's just one example of many where I had to choose heartbreak over suffering, is what I call it. So it was a heartbreak for me to let go of my dog, to let go of my partner, to let go of some friends, to let go of my house. But I know that if I would stay in those situations, it would be me suffering.
Exactly.
Right. So I had to choose that heartbreak over suffering in order to live that freedom that was knocking on my door. And I feel curious, what helped you through those situations of letting go? Like, was that the moments where it became challenging for you in big or subtle ways? What helped you to keep choosing awakening?
Honestly, it was the spiritual practices, the meditation, the calmness, the connecting with nature, the absolute trust in the divine. You know, I grew up Christian, however, I don't associate with religion. One thing that my grandmother instilled in me, though, is a beautiful example of how to connect with source and to have that unshakable faith. And it just became a point to where I just intuitively knew this was the path to my liberation. I wanted liberation more than I wanted to suffer and stay in that. More than I wanted the comfort, I wanted complete liberation. And so I was just like, you know, however it has to come, I'm going to stay on this path until I receive that liberation. And so similar to just like what you said, you know, it's like having to choose the heartbreak over the suffering, or it was me like, all right, I want liberation. And this is the path. It's so beautiful how I stumbled upon meditation and yoga because, like I said, no one, absolutely no one in my family had ever meditated before, had ever done yoga. You know, some people are blessed with like mothers who taught them how to do yoga. And I never had any example. And even now, I'm able to take the knowledge and pass it on to my siblings who are still in the ghetto or, you know, and they're sharing it with their friends. However, you know, it just wasn't there. But it's that truth that you can feel in your core. You know that's truth. You know it. You have that inner compass that's telling you. And when you get on this path, even though things might be removed from you, it's not lonely because you have that connection with your spirit team, with your ancestors, with divinity, with your guardian angels. All of these, the spiritual team is right there guiding you, and they're whispering, you know, they're telling you, do this, go here, do that, do that. And as you're on this path, you start to see the synchronicities. You start to see the people that come into your life, the teachers. Different people entered my life as teachers to offer different medicine. And it was just like, it's so beautiful to just be on that path. And it's like, oh, I'm meeting this person and this person. So yeah, it was just that unshakable faith and wanting my liberation more than anything else, because I knew how my life was going. That is not how I wanted to live my life, because there were, you know, suicidal thoughts. There were all sorts of thoughts going through my mind. I just knew that I wanted my heaven here on earth. You know, growing up in the church, they teach you about, okay, you'll get heaven after, but I wanted heaven now. Whatever you believe in, whatever comes. However, if I'm looking and I'm seeing paradise, there are these places, these islands, these beautiful places you can visit that look like paradise. I want that. I don't want my upbringing, me being born into poverty, to dictate whether or not I can experience that. And so it just became that my liberation became more important than anything else.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And when because you share you grew up Christian, so how was it for your family when you started to go into these practices?
I love that you brought this question up. It was very challenging because you have to unlearn a lot. When I was younger, there was so much fear mongering. It was always like heaven or hell, heaven or hell. And I remember I would have these nightmares of being on a roller coaster and it's like, all right, you're going to heaven. And then at the last minute, it would drop and it'd be like, psych, you're going to hell. And then it's like I would drop down and I'm
Wow.
just I was always terrified, yet also equally infatuated with the concept. It's so strange, but I was mainly terrified. And what I grew to see is that I had all these questions that no one could answer in the church. I would wonder about deeper esoteric sort of knowledge that no one could answer. They would say, "Oh, just believe it." And it's always been very hard for me to just take something at face value. It was like I have to feel it. I have to understand it in my body. And if you can't offer me that, I'm having a hard time believing everything that you say. And so my particular church that my grandmother went to, it was frowned upon to meditate, to do things
Yeah.
like that. Because it's like, well, no, are you trying to play God? Are you trying to take this into your own hands? And it's like,
Yeah.
that's the blinders, right? That's just the blindfold over the eyes. It's like, surrender all of your power and control to an unknown, unseen force.
Mm.
Don't question anything. Don't try to tap into that power. Don't try to make things happen for yourself. You just have to surrender and accept where you are right now. That's what they pushed on the particular church that I grew up. And
Mhm.
it's like, everyone's suffering, everyone's struggling, everyone is poor, but you just have to surrender. And God forbid, don't try to manifest. You have to. It seemed like they wanted to keep you where you were and to surrender all of your control and faith. And so as
Yeah.
I got into this path, and seeing how important it was for me. Now, even though I, grew up in a Christian household, I never truly identified as Christian, even though there were times when I got baptized or just witnessing all the violence that was going on around me. That was the default. Everyone runs to the church to try and get their
Yeah.
life right.
Yeah.
And when I got on this path, I saw how transformative it was. And I just knew that I had to let my grandmother know some way because in her eyes, I'm a saint. I by no means was an angel growing up. I definitely got into my share of trouble. However, she still feels that I'm her baby, I'm her saint. And so I felt that if I were able to show her that, hi, I'm doing these things, however, I'm still your angel, I'm still your saint, then maybe I could get you to see things in a different way. Not to try to force what I did onto her, but just to show her, maybe you've been a little bit lied to, or maybe this is not what the Bible meant when it said this or that, because it got misinterpreted a lot.
Mhm.
And so I remember being back home and I would wake up and I would meditate and she'd walk in because I'm doing the practice and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, this is sort of like prayer. You know how you take the time to every day when you wake up, you start to pray and you start to connect with God. I was like, this is sort of like prayer. And it's just creates this sense of calmness and peace and connection to the divine within you. So, she's just still was kind of like, I don't know about that, but I see you're okay. So, all right.
Mm.
But what
That's
really started
beautiful.
to to shake up for her is because then I eventually got the snake tattoo on my hand. So I came back home and I had tattoos and having piercings and I had the snake tattoo. And she's just like, oh my gosh, you have a snake in your hand? My grandmother is the most hilarious person, just like the words that she says. It's so hilarious. But she's like, why would you do that? Like insinuating that they're evil, that there's something
Mm.
fear. And I'm just like,
Because that's what the church
that's
basically
what the church
teaches
does.
us, right? That the
Yeah.
serpents are evil or from the devil or they're demons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so again, her seeing me, knowing that I'm still your pure being, your pure baby, but I have this snake tattoo. It's like now I'm in her mind. I'm kind of messing with her head because she's like, well, I know she's not evil. Why does she have
Mm.
this snake tattoo? And so I was like, well, grandmother, in other cultures, the serpents are higher knowledge, they're life force energy. They represent these things, this power, this, wisdom. To me, even the balance of the light and the dark, the flow state. And so I'm
Yes.
telling her all of these things, and she's just like, she's hearing me, but she's not hearing me. But I'm planting the seed, I'm planting the seed to
Mm.
kind of shake up her idea of what that means. And even now, I just have a new ball python that I got. And now, mind you, I've been around snakes a lot.
You have an
Hell,
actual python.
yeah, I do. But
Wow.
so the funny thing about this is, right, I've held 6-foot snakes and all sorts of things. Like, they don't terrify me, right? However, as fate would have it, most ball pythons, royal pythons were what they truly were called in Africa. Most royal pythons, they got the nickname ball python because they were timid. If you touch them, they go into a little ball. Not mine. So I thought I was getting a little timid one. The one that I just recently received, he's a Leo. I named him Raja after Shiva's dancing form, Nataraja. And my partner pointed out to me, he's like, isn't that also the name of in Aladdin? Jasmine has this
Yes, I was just about to
name.
say.
I didn't even realize that. But here it is, the synchronicities. I got a Leo, royal python named Raja, which Raja, the term also means royalty in Sanskrit as well. And so he has an attitude and he's still a baby, but he invokes a little fear in me. And so I was like, wow, out of all the different kinds I could have gotten the one that was timid and I never would have gotten over any hidden subconscious fears. But, all the fear mongering that they've done to kind of demonize the serpent and things like there was still
Yes.
a remnant of that within me. And now I'm being faced to have to tame a lion. He is a lion. When he
Wow.
when he attacks food, he just like takes it and he's throwing it up in the air and he's slamming it and he just like yanks it back into his cage. This is the energy of my ball python that I have right now.
Wow.
And I'm still in the taming phase. I'm still trying to tame him and get him to warm up. But like I remember last time I tried to grab him, he like grabbed onto a tree. He didn't want to be held. And so I just like released it and I just like closed the door
Wow.
and I just left because I didn't want him
So
to associate.
how big is this snake?
So he's long now. He's gotten to be maybe longer than a foot, but he's 8 months old. So he's still technically a
Wow.
baby. But even as a baby, he had that just energy. So it's like out of all the ones I could have gotten, now I have this one that I have to tame that I'm like, okay. And it's crazy because the snakes, they can feel when you're afraid and they can feel if you're shy or if you're scared. So it's like you have to tame the inner scaredness just to be able to handle them. So it's just a beautiful initiation that I'm being initiated into right
Yeah, because
now.
it sounds like it's an experience also for you to meet any parts inside that are conditioned to be afraid of serpents, right? Because that's something that happened to me so often because I stand so fully for it, like working with the dark. I've spent over 26 days in complete darkness by myself. I've had so many dreams with the snakes. I just came in January from my first voodoo initiation with my main spirits also being the serpents. And I can just see there's so many examples of situations where I needed to face my personal fear, but also any collective fears that I was holding towards serpents, towards the dark, towards voodoo, towards, all those things that have been so strongly demonized by our society. And I feel as people that are standing up for this work, we get these situations served to transform those fears so that we can fully bring the transmission and the original pure power that the serpent energy holds.
Exactly, because imagine if I had just a very tame, timid, ordinary ball python. I would never have to address that fear, because it's
Exactly.
so used to them being very docile. And even the bigger ones, they were already tamed. So I'm used to that. So it's easy to not be afraid of that. When you have one that's like this very much lion, tiger energy, who's like, don't touch me. What are you looking at? As soon as he sees something, he's like getting into his S shape, ready to strike. I'm having to tame one that's defensive. They're defensive because they don't know. To them, when they're a baby, everything is able to eat them. So they're very defensive. However,
Yeah.
the typical 90% of ball pythons typically just curl into a ball and get shy. And they let you hold them, but they get shy. Not mine. He gets into an S shape, like, what are you doing? But one can imagine the kind of power that's going to come from that, right? I'm having to tame an actual lion energy right now. And so it's just like you have to deal with your fears and you have to tame that. So yeah, I'll definitely keep you updated with that progress and how it goes.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
the serpent energy, it's the dark, that's the other thing that happened to me. While when the Kundalini awakening and shift was happening, I also find myself being very much attracted to the dark. And it's crazy because I can look through my social media page and I'm going through it, and you can see there'll be moments where it's like everything is like bright. Then there'll be a moment, a thread of where everything is dark, like everything is like black and white, or everything is just like dark imagery. That was me like going through back and forth, because you can't live too much in either way. You can't be just all love and light, oh, everything is great. And you also can't just be like, ooh, I am liveth in the flesh and I am all about the darkness, because then you don't have that balance, and that darkness can consume you. That darkness is very powerful and it can
Yes.
consume you. And so we have to be able to dwell in the dark, to go into the dark, however, still carry that internal light within us to keep us centered and keep us humble, because that darkness,
Yeah.
and think about it, that's why you have so many people, powerful people, who just lose it because they're consumed by the darkness. They're consumed by that power. It's a powerful
Yes.
energy. However, I was very much drawn to the dark, and it's so sweet to be there. Like, not even saying that, and you all can feel my essence. It's very pure. However, the darkness can be very sweet as well, because think about it.
Yes.
To be in the dark is just the absence of light. Even when the light is on, the darkness is still here. You turn that light off, then the darkness reappears. I feel like there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen with how we view the dark, with how we see it, because automatically everyone hears darkness and they think evil. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
evil. But it's like, no, in the womb it was dark. It's when we close our eyes to meditate, unless you are visualizing and seeing things, it can be dark. When you do the blindfolds and you spend time in darkness, it's dark. But that's just when that moment when you're in a direct connection, everything is tuned out. I've been like in a deprivation tank where the sound is gone, the sight is gone, you're blindfolded, but you're in darkness and you're floating. And it does something to your senses. It helps you tap into a different type of energy, into the source energy.
Yes.
So I think we need to unlearn how not to be gullible or naive to think that evil does not exist, or that there aren't people who operate on a different vibration. That very much is real. However, the true and natural essence of the dark and what darkness is not evil. Is that,
Beautiful.
do we, as a woman of color, am I supposed to hate my skin because it's a darker shade? It's like, where do we get this notion from? And growing up, seeing the music videos, seeing different rap, it's like they were honoring the lighter you are, the lighter you are. And it's like, where do we get this idea that to be dark or to be in the darkness, that it's bad, that it's ugly?
It's an overemphasis on light in so
Yeah.
many ways, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
it's from skin color, it's to light workers being like overemphasized. And I remember 2 years ago, I came across a post and it was about dark workers. And it was about how dark workers are not about evil, but they are connected to the feminine forces, the yin forces. They're connected to the power of the earth, to the power of the womb. And like you said, so much of life starts in darkness. Like, we grow in our mother's womb in a dark place. Like seeds, they grow underneath the ground before they reach the light. They start to like sprout in the darkness. And so for me, I went through this beautiful like redefining process of what darkness actually means. And for me, being a dark worker is about embracing death and letting go, which happens so strongly with Kundalini Awakening. When I was in my longest dark retreat, it was 12 days and nights. I was by myself in complete darkness. I felt the deepest unwinding and like being held process I've ever experienced. It was such a deep homecoming, such a deep out breath. I think that was one of the most powerful experience of what darkness means, or at least one of these shades of dark, that is this pure source. The place where all life stems from. I think even before they say this story about the Big Bang, even before that, there was no light, right? Like everything was dark. So that's what comes before all of life.
Exactly. And I love that you brought that up and mentioned that, because it makes me think about this DMT journey that I had. Gotta give love to Mama Mimosa. I'm having this experience. And so I was with my partner and a close friend of mine at the time. And for the longest, we were only partaking in acacia, which is more of a gentle kind. It's beautiful. You see a lot of colors. You have these miraculous experiences. The top is removed and you get to discover who you truly are underneath the mask, right? But then mimosa is more like all right, this is where you might experience a true ego death. This is where you're like going to be shown not what you want to see, but what you need to see. And it can happen with both varieties. However, mimosa is usually like that. The dark, I would equate mimosa with the shadow worker and then acacia with the light worker energy, you know? And
Mm.
so it's so crazy because I was the first one to try this. I had not known that they hadn't tried this variety first. So we used to take turns and just guide each other through the process in a very ritualistic way, in a very beautiful way. So I do it. And this was like when I was very firstly just meeting my partner too, like before we were even in a relationship. And my other friend, we just became like this trio where we were just like doing meditation work, doing ritual work, and going deep. And so they say, are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And I do it. And all of a sudden, I'm feeling myself being lifted all the way up. And I go through this tunnel where it feels like not feels like there were aliens who were like looking and checking me out before sending me off to the next level. I remember looking down at them as I'm ascending and I'm saying to myself, when they said, am I ready? I knew they were aliens. Like I always, when I first met them, I used to always call them aliens. I'm like, I didn't know that you guys were referring to sending me back to your hometown. Like I'm just being, hey. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know. And so I'm going off into this space and everything gets so incredibly beautiful. The feeling that's conjuring up in my body was beyond orgasmic, beyond anything that I can. And I'm a Taurus, so I'm very much in tune with my senses. I haven't experienced anything on earth that felt that good. And I'm just going through all these different colors. And at one point, you know, in yoga, they always talk about union, that oneness. We are one with everything, and everything is you. I am you, you're me. It's hard to understand that on a very base level to just say that, because if I touch your shoulder, I don't feel that on my shoulder. However, there has to be like they are encouraging you to understand this feeling. However, when I'm on that journey, I actually felt what it felt like to be everything and nothing at the same time. And I think I even said it out loud. I was like, wow, it's almost like I was receiving all these downloads, all this energy was coming into me. And I was like, wow, I know everything. Like there isn't, if someone could have came to me and spoken to me in that moment, I'd have been able to tell you everything you needed or wanted to know about. And then the moment I said, I know everything. Now, mind you, at this point, I go beyond all these different colors. I go through space. It was like the Big Bang thing happened where boom, an explosion of colors, and then boom, I'm in darkness and complete and total darkness. My body was spread out all over to where it wasn't solid. I was everything, the infinite space. And I'm like, I know everything. And the moment I said that was when the lights went completely off. And I was like, oh, I'm feeling like I'm floating in space. And I'm like, wow, did I just beat the game of life? Because it was like the end of a video game when you play a video game and everything is like celebrating you and they're like, yeah, you won, confetti everywhere. That's what it felt like. And I was like, wow, am I dead? And, you know, DMT gets released in the body at birth and at death.
Yes.
So I'm just like, everything is dark. And usually I can hear, usually if you open your eyes, it makes the experience less intense. You're able to see your surroundings, but I'm opening my eyes. I don't hear my friends. I don't see anything. It's just complete darkness. And I just assumed that I had died. I was like, wow, I beat the game of life. Because like, how else do you explain the grand finale? And now it's complete and total darkness. And so I sat there and surrendering for a little bit. I'm like, wow. I was kind of disappointed because I was like, wow, that was amazing, but dang, I didn't want to beat the game yet. Like,
what to do now?
I didn't want to beat the game. Like, can I go back to that other level? And that's what came to my thought. I was like, but wait, I'm not done yet. I have kids, like 2 children. I have a mission for them. I have things I need to do. I'm not done. My mission on earth is not done. It's just getting good. I have medicine to share. And all of a sudden, my awareness comes back. And then this is the crazy part. Usually, like I said, when you open your eyes, you can see everything as is. But I finally started coming back too. And I'm dropped into the living room where I can see them and I can see everything. However, I don't see my physical body. I look down and I am not there. And so I had to manifest myself back into the plane. So I would say, hand, and then my hand would appear. But then if I took my attention off of it, it would become like this ghastly white gas, like this white smoke. So I'd say hand, arm, arm, leg. I had to command myself back into the reality. It was so intense. But yeah, when you were
Wow.
mentioning about the Big Bang process and the darkness, it's like, yeah, I feel like, it was complete darkness. And then boom, all the light and all the colors and everything happens. I feel like I really experienced what the Big Bang sort of experience was like.
Beautiful. And I love that that happened during DMT because when you go into darkness, like a dark retreat, after 3 days, the body starts to produce DMT by itself. So I
Mm,
feel that these like very deep homecoming processes, very like these death and birth processes, for me also have been very much around the DMT.
mhm.
DMT process is beautiful.
It's very
I love
beautiful.
that.
There were two moments where the serpent energy really started to come and be like, all right, this is a part of who you are. This is like a part of your journey. And that was when I went to the sweat lodge. It was like a Native American sweat lodge up in the mountains. And I had just been called to go there. And they do it with the different elements. As you move through water, you're moving through emotions, all these different things. And I remember driving there, and as I pulled up, they're greeting everyone. And as I walk up to the door, she's like, "Hi, we've been waiting for you." And I was like, huh? But being the person that I am, I was a little bit like, huh, but I was also intrigued and curious. I'm like, you knew who I was. And it wasn't like we were all at the same time. So it wasn't like, oh, you're late. It was like a no. Oh, we've been waiting for the time for you to come and show up. So I'm like, oh, okay. And so we're going through the process and we're doing the sweating and I'm just releasing. There's something way different between an authentic sweat lodge and just going to a sauna. It's completely different. And I'm
Mhm.
going through and I'm releasing. And then all of a sudden, this light language came. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm a snake or something. And then this light language is coming, and I'm just like slithering around and hissing like a snake. And I was a little bit nervous and embarrassed because I'm like, everyone here, no one knows me. And I don't want to scare anybody or mess up their experience, but I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop it. And
Mhm.
then we were exiting out, and I remember it was like darkness inside of the sweat lodge. And as I come out, I'm lying on the earth and I'm looking up at the sky, and I'm still light language is pouring and the S is pouring. And the lady comes back over to me and she's like, yeah, that's it. Like she was waiting for me to come to have that activation on that deep level. And she didn't look at me like I was being weird or I was strange. And I couldn't, it's crazy because when that light language came, I didn't know the words, but I understood the words. And I remember saying something like relete or something. I can't remember the exact word, but it was meaning to be released. And I'm releasing things from my body and I'm saying a bunch of different words. And I'm like, I don't know any other languages. I know a little bit of Spanish from when I was in high school, but I'm not fluent in anything
Mm.
else but
Mm.
English. Yet I'm changing that. I'm going to be fluent in 6 languages soon. But at the time, it was just this ancient language and it sounded like a language. It wasn't gibberish. It was an actual dialogue with inflections and all. And this lady was just holding me and she was just being there with me. And she was like, yes, and responding to what I was saying in the light language. She was responding in
Wow.
English. It was so incredible. And so that was my first taste of the serpent energy being very, very known. Obviously I had the Kundalini's experience and things like that, but that was when the energy was just like oozing through me and I did not understand what was happening. And the other times had been with DMT. Like I'd be on these different journeys. And I remember one time in particular, the serpents just started to show up. And I became this big, tall, like serpent goddess. I became really
Wow.
yeah, I became really tall and like snakes are coming out my hair. My body, the lower half portion of me was like a snake, but the upper part was a woman. And there were all these women who were around me, who were praising me, who were also like serpent women. And they were just praising me. And I'm just I'm experiencing this where there's just so much serpent energy around. And this energy, when it first visited me, it felt terrifying because it was so strong and
Yeah.
powerful. And there's this rug I got from Morocco that I used to meditate on all the time. I gave it to one of my friends. And when this energy first visited me, it was like, kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm just not feeling this. It was like what my Raja does, my snake does. It gets into this S shape and it's like, it moves fast and then it just like stops in front of you. That's what that
Mm.
energy did. It was like, whoosh, and then it stopped and looked at me and I was like, oh. And then like eventually where it used to be like I would visit that energy, eventually that became me. And so I was meditating on this rug and I gave it to my friend and he was like, he called me up like a couple of days later. He was like, listen, I don't know what you did to that rug, but this energy, this entity, this big, powerful goddess came and I almost shit my pants because she was very, he was like, I didn't know whether to be turned on or frightened by her because she was so powerful, but so beautiful. And just, I'm like, yeah, I know that energy. I know that energy very well. And so that's when it became apparent to me, like something's there. They're calling me. They are calling me now. They're wanting me to dive more into that. And that's when Serpent Goddess became to be born.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. One of the things that I hear you say about the serpent energy is that it's very powerful. And I feel curious, what are some of the other flavors or qualities that you sense in serpent energy?
Definitely mysterious, definitely seductive, yet also calm. There's a deep calmness, a deep, like strong calmness, very flow state, very much like I think of switching dimensions, like being able to exist in other worlds, like, just shapeshifter almost in essence. Yeah, just holder of secrets. Like they're so mysterious. That's why it was so important for me to get one. And I wanted to understand it on an even deeper level, not knowing that I would have to face deep hidden fears that were there that I wasn't even aware of. It's very much divine feminine energy, very much so like the hips, the way if you tune into that and you start to move your body and tune into the movement of your hips and to move like a snake where it's very slow yet controlled and powerful, yet can be sped up at times. But however, primarily it's very much rhythmic and in tune with the vibrations of earth, like even cobras, like snakes can sense energy, they can feel energy on a very deep level. And that's so incredibly powerful. They're one of the few who can really feel your energy and your essence. And they can sense when you're in a state of calmness and when you're calm. So to practice deep meditation, the snake will call bullshit on whether you are really practicing, what you preach. It's like they're able to pull out all of the best qualities in you and shine a mirror to any of your hidden spots as well. It's just fascinating. Also, royalty, also prosperity, and in Ifa, there's Oshumare, who's the rainbow serpent.
That's
And
my initiation. I've been initiated in Rainbow
Oshumare.
Serpent. Yes.
Ah, wow, beautiful. I've
Yeah.
had initiations with that, however, and I've gone through different Ifa initiations. However, I wouldn't say that I am. This is very difficult actually to speak about because my father being from Nigeria, I was naturally drawn to the ancient ways that my ancestors used to practice and tap into knowledge. And so in the US, however, when I first got into Ifa, it was before it was starting to get as popular as it is. 2023. I would say 2015 maybe was when I first got into Ifa. And it's starting to get more popular. What I'm noticing is that there are individuals who are not necessarily having the ashe or the true essence, the true integrity of the ancient knowledge. And with that comes a lot of people taking advantage of others. So I don't have an Ile is what they call it. I don't have one that I belong to because I experienced so much of taking advantage of maleficent energy that I'm not a part of. And I don't do well in situations where they tell you that this is the only way. You can't practice anything else. Like some of them were telling me that I couldn't do my meditations anymore. And I was like, you gotta be kidding.
That's the
There's
first
no
thing I
way.
asked when I found my spiritual mother in Benin. The first thing I asked was, can I still practice my other practices? Because if not, then this
I'm
is
not
not
with it.
the right place
Exactly.
for me.
And so the ones that I had met were telling me no. And I was like, well, screw this. Like, no to you, because I know this works for me. And, I pull the knowledge, I gravitate to what I can feel and I incorporate it. However, I'm not just like, well, I'm not even, I don't practice Hinduism, even though I, honor some of the Hindu gods and goddesses. I'm just not a part of one religion that tells me I can only stay in this bubble. I can only stay in this box. I just like pull from different knowledge that resonates with me. And that's not to say, though, I've had some very, very intense and powerful Ifa initiations that I know my ancestors must have felt, because there were times where I got to the point where it felt like I wasn't going to be able to make it out of the initiation. It was that intense. And that
Mm,
right when I felt like I just couldn't take any more, boom, I was liberated and it stopped and I was held. And, so that's what I do admire about those initiations, because it kind of breaks away from what we are normally experiencing and puts you through these different tasks, these different initiations that
yeah.
can be difficult, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the weak-minded. So that's why I admire anyone who's gone through initiations, because I know what it encompasses. They're not always easy.
Mm,
I've
yeah.
never been through initiation that's easy. They're not easy.
No.
You're going to be tested. Your power, your ashe, like who you are, you're going to be tested. And how
Mm,
can you surrender in those moments into what is? And so I am grateful that it was a part of my path. However, I'm still searching for that teacher in that way, who can show me
mm,
more of my ancient lineage and history in a way that's not prejudiced. Because also there were mainly males who were practicing it in where I'm from. And so they
yes.
were always like, oh, the woman is submissive and woman has to do this. And you have to be okay
Yes.
with having like 5 husbands. And I'm like, I'm a Taurus and I am stingy. I am not sharing. So I do not get with that. To each his own, to everyone else. I don't, if that's what you want to practice, cool. To me,
Yeah.
no, I'm stingy. I'm selfish. And so I couldn't get with that. And not to mention, I also had a couple of them who tried to talk to me on a romantic level. And to me, that
Mm,
was very off-putting, because in my spiritual practice, I've done a lot to overcome those very base, like sacral root chakra, can't control your desire energy.
like
I've overcome that.
animalistic. Yeah.
Very animalistic. It's like, how are you going to teach me about spirituality when you haven't mastered your animalistic desires?
Mm,
Can't separate the two to just give me this knowledge that I'm seeking. You want to taint
yeah,
it,
yeah.
trying to overstep the boundaries. And so I took a pause from it. However, I'm very much open and calling in, that connection to the ways of my ancestors in a way that can resonate and still go along with my current practices that I do.
Beautiful. Maybe we can connect more about this because I
Yeah,
feel like the family I found was a mother and a sister and very open to Western traditions as well, or Eastern traditions, very
I would love that.
open-minded. And yeah, very beautiful. So they exist. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. They are out there. And it took me many years also to find. And
See?
they kind of found me during a trip. It was completely not planned that we found each other. It just
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
through synchronicities, it just happened. And before I knew it, we were just falling into each other's arms crying. And I didn't even know the woman. We just met. And
Oh,
somehow, yeah, I doubled my stay
oh,
in Benin and I wasn't planning on it. And I was in the initiation, not even knowing what I was going into, like I was in day one. And then they said, yeah, tomorrow we're going to shave your head. And I realized, like, oh, wow, I just followed my resonance so strongly that I had no idea what
yeah.
actually was going to happen. But it was very
Yeah.
beautiful, very
I
powerful.
would definitely love to hear and love to know about it, because like that part of me is still very strongly in me, wanting to
Mm.
connect deeper too. Because also they tell you the things like Ifa, like voodoo is evil. They think black
Yeah,
magic. That's not the
it's not
case. Not
true.
true. Just like with anything, there are people and beings who don't respect it and uphold it in the way that it should be, who do
Yes.
it for ill intentions, and karma will deal with that.
Yeah.
However, as in its core being, it's just a way. And that's why, even with my offering in the Wealthy Woman Vault, I did one called From Scarcity to Sorcery. And for me, sorcery, when you look that up, it's like black magic, it's voodoo, it's evil, and all these different things. But to me, sorcery is just you being in direct connection with the source, and you're wielding that power to create whatever it is that you want here on this plane. And we have to unlearn that, because it's like they tell you these different things to sort of diminish your power, to take your power away. They're afraid of your power. The moment we surrender to this path, whatever is calling you, when you surrender into that, then you're always held, you're always protected, you're always guided.
Mm.
Everything becomes so much more beautiful, and the clarity, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
No, and it's the union, right? I think a lot of these traditions that they call evil or like witchcraft, like whether it's the European witches, whether it's indigenous traditions in South America, whether it's voodoo in Africa, those
Yeah,
are the traditions connected to earth and to
exactly.
ground and to power and to like that ability to stand up for what we believe in. And I think there have been many systems that are just not wanting that for people to fully stand up in their power and to access that power. Because
Exactly.
when you access that power, it's very difficult to be controlled.
You can't be controlled, you know. It's like when you first do plant medicine, when you first access Kundalini, and when you do all these sorts of things, you can't take those, like you can't go back to seeing things the way you did before.
No, no.
And that's what they're afraid of.
Exactly. I feel curious because you've been sharing about that you've been raised with Christianity and then you discovered like a whole other relationship with God, so to speak. I don't know how you would call it now, this force, if you call it God or the universe or the mystery or like, what is it for you now?
I interchange between it all. I do use God because that's me reclaiming. Because most of the time when you hear God, people just automatically assume, oh, you're referring to Christian God. And that's me reclaiming that essence, that term to saying, no, I'm not referring that I'm Christian. I'm calling it God as the essence. And I don't know whether that's he or she. So I'm not going to say he like they do a lot within the Bible. I also say a source, divinity, the universe, the creator, everything that's in co-creation, because I'm not sure. I haven't seen. So I'm just making sure that I'm covering my bases, but also not to offend anyone to think that it means like religion. So I kind of interchange the two, especially when I'm teaching. I might say source, I might say divinity. However, there is this essence, this one connection that I feel is responsible for everything. And once we strengthen that connection, it doesn't matter what you call it, but the source knows, the essence knows what you mean when you're calling on it and tapping into that. When you do that, you are just on your path, you're on your purpose, you are living out your mission of what you were put here on earth to do. And so I do believe in a higher power. What it looks like, what is it exactly? I don't know. However, I do believe in that because I've had this essence visit. I've even recently I was deep in meditation in this essence, which would feel like the essence of God, of source, creator, divine mother. I also use that a lot. What would feel like that came to me is all encompassing energy, powerful energy comes to me and was saying to me, like, because I'm going through a shift in business and rebranding and refiguring out things. I'm also very new in business. However, I just know what I want. So I'm wanting to quantum leap all the time. And going through that, it comes with grief and surrendering. I'm also at a point in my business where I've completely surrendered everything to the divine, meaning like even my latest offer, the landing page, everything did not get created without me first consulting with my spirit team. It looks nothing like my Pinterest. I used to make Pinterest vision boards for whenever I'm creating something. This one looks nothing like it. Like I typically don't go for purple. And even my latest offer, it's like a purple angelic figure. And I'm like, if that's not spirit, I don't know what it is. Like that was nowhere in my vision. And now that's just what it is. And I'm completely surrendering because it's like, I don't have the answers, but I know my spirit team does. They can see my blind sides. They can see things that I'm not aware of. And I want my dreams, my manifestations, my highest self, I want it to play out even better than I imagined. So I'm going to call on my spirit team and surrender all control. So that's what I've surrendered a great deal. And surrendering is also not for the faint of heart. It's like an initiation within itself because you have to have this belief in the unknown and what you can't see and to get out of your own way. And so I'm just in a period of surrendering and not certain of when the big overflow is coming. Overflow is coming, but I'm like, okay, when's the ha? And so this essence, this source came and said to me, you're expecting 2 packages tomorrow, aren't you? I was like, yeah. And it's like, well, you're not doubting that they're going to arrive, are you? I'm like, no, you're right. And this essence is like, well, then why do you doubt? Or how can you doubt that my blessings aren't going to flow to you just the same? That you're not about to be blessed with an overflow of prosperity and blessings beyond what you can even fathom right now. Why do you not believe that those blessings are coming just the same way as those packages are coming? And I'm just like, wow, yes. How do we surrender into the knowing that you are going to be provided for just like you would expect a package to arrive, you know?
Mm.
And that's the space that I'm in
Beautiful.
right now. I'm like, all right, my big blessings are coming. I see that. And I'm just surrendering and knowing that it's going to happen. It does not mean that you don't take action. It means that you keep doing the work to align yourself with it, with the knowing that in the end, you're going to get exactly what it is you desire.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. So when you speak about the divine or like source or God or the universe, and then you speak about the serpents, I feel curious how you experience and if you experience them as different.
Yeah, it's a different energy, even though I feel like the creator is everything, you know, that oneness. So they're responsible for the serpent, but the serpent is not God. You know, it makes me think about my grandmother. She just recently discovered that I have an actual snake. And I was spraying down the snake tank on the phone with her. And she's like, "What's that noise?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just spraying down a tank." She was like, "Well, what are you spraying down?" I was like, "Grandma, you don't want to know." She just kept egging me on. So I was like, "Okay, Grandma, I have a snake." And she was like, "A snake?" And she was like freaking out because she thought that the water bottle spray, she thought that was the snake hissing. I'm like, "No, no, that's not the snake. That's me spraying down a water bottle." She was like, it's so funny. She got really quiet, and her next response was, "Do you worship that thing?" And I was like, I don't worship the snake. I honor, but I'm not worshiping the snake like this is my God, you know. The same way that I honor earth and the plants and things like that is the same way I have my connection with the serpents. However, the serpent is even more so a little bit more of my teacher, you know, like a master teacher, as well as earth can do that as well. But no, I don't consider the serpent to be God, to be source, to be divinity. It's an essence, it's a likeness of it. However, it's not it, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. Yeah, because in a way it's maybe still in the form where maybe the creator is more the formless or
Exactly.
expressing through all the formless that expresses through all the forms.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Beautifully put. Exactly.
beautiful.
Same way as us. You know, I was watching this documentary before, and in the very beginning, they said, "We're going to tell you these three words that's going to shift and directly affect your connection with how you experience the world. And these three words will allow you to command what it is that you want in life." And I'm watching it with my partner, and he's like, "What do you think those three words are?" And I just intuitively, not even thinking twice, I said, "I am God." And he was like, "Oh, you think that's what it is?" I was like, "Yeah, I think that's what it is," because I know that people hear that term and they automatically think, especially in the church community, they'll think, "You're claiming to be God," but it's like, no, that's not what those words mean. It means that I'm a piece that the creator lives within me, and I am the creator. We are oneness. And so it gets simplified to "I am God," not saying that I am that, you know? And then we make it to the end of the documentary, and lo and behold, that's what the words were. And for him, I know he struggles heavily. He don't, you know, to hear that, it's like, "Oh, no, 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 no." Like, but for me, it's like, yes, 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 yes. Like we are that. That is us.
Mm,
And I'm not claiming to be in control. I don't even want to be in control of everything and everyone. I'm not claiming that power. I'm very humble. However, I know what lives within me and that I am a form of that. I'm an expression of that.
yes,
So
yes,
we can't be
exactly.
afraid of acknowledging that expression of what is, you know.
Yeah. And I also find that the more like life force or the more my Kundalini awakens in me, the more communion I experience with that
Mm-hmm.
creator, right? The
Mm-hmm.
more of the whatever was in the way gets out of the way. And so I do feel that the whole process of like awakening our life force and embracing like that Kundalini awakening process, the more that communion gets cultivated in a way between us and the
Exactly.
creator or us as the
Yeah.
creator, both.
All of it. Yeah. I feel like it puts you in direct connection with source. And I think maybe that's probably perhaps why the serpents were condemned, because I feel like they're the gatekeepers. They kind of like guide you along the way. You know, it's a reason why the serpent is symbolic of Kundalini, why a lot of ancient medicine, they use the serpents as the logos, the pictures of them. And it's like, that's the path, you know, that's the path that's leading to your liberation. And of course, that path, if it was going to be easy, then, I mean, would we cherish it as much as we do? Would we honor it as much as we do? And so, yeah, there's just a lot of unlearning that has to be done around that. But I feel like the serpent path is, it's a path of great responsibility because it comes with a lot of power. However, you're in direct connection with source because it's that life force energy, that Kundalini energy. It really puts you in direct connection with source.
Beautiful. So I feel curious because you've been sharing your story so beautifully. And also, I think some of the things that I will like to highlight is that in this whole process of your Kundalini awakening, what helped you through the process the most was this choosing your liberation, choosing your awakening over anything else, right? And to close, because I feel we're going towards the end of our conversation, if you can say anything to the listener that is maybe going through their own Kundalini awakening process, like having their own longing maybe to go through that process more, what is a wisdom or words of guidance or advice that you want to share with them?
I'll tell a brief, quick story that also has been like the blueprint for how I've been able to just surrender on the path. I was going through another initiation and I didn't, kind of like how you landed in that initiation, didn't even know what was going on. It's kind of like how I ended up in this one. And I didn't know what to experience. I was just allowing myself to be the vessel, remaining open to what wanted to be expressed. And there was this guy there who read every single book about Kundalini energy, every single book about Tantra, just knew everything. And it made me feel like I knew nothing. And then it made me feel like I wasn't supposed to be there. Like, well, I should have done my research. I don't know any of these things, right? However, as we're going through the initiations, I was able to feel every single thing the guru mentioned you would feel. I was able to go through every single ecstatic state. I was able to venture off into other dimensions and other realms. Meanwhile, this guy experienced nothing at all, because he thought he knew it all. He thought he had it figured out. He was expecting it. He was reading the book to try to explain the mystical. And so at some point, we have to just completely surrender and remain and be that open vessel. I tell everyone to always remain a student. And also, there comes a point in time where you have to step away from the book knowledge and implement, embody, and walk in it and feel it. We don't always have to know the answers. You know, that's a very logical way of thinking. We don't have to know the answers. However, we can feel truth for what it is. And so we walk by that, we feel that, we embody that, and allow yourself to be open to what wants to be expressed. Because the moment you expect it, the further you take yourself away from it. If you expect to be enlightened, you're not going to be enlightened. If you say, okay, I'm doing this to be enlightened, you're going to be further away from it. You know, so you have to have the intention, you know, of what you want, and then get out of your own way and be the vessel. So wherever you are on your journey, also, I would say that it's not a race. Doesn't matter where you are. We all have different paths to be here. Don't look at what someone else is doing and compare your story or compare your journey. Don't try and mimic what someone else is doing. Just find what's authentically you. Because the moment you rest in your authenticity, the moment you come to your path and your true purpose and your true prosperity, your true wealth. And that can't be created by looking at someone else. It's an inside job. So stay the course, stay authentic to who you are, remain open to the beautiful experiences. Don't have to have everything figured out. You don't even have to know who you want to be and where you want to go. Just keep that inner compass, listening to your intuition, your inner knowing of what feels like truth. And at the end, everything you want to know is within you. So we have to stop looking externally for that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank
you so much.
This has been such a beautiful conversation. I definitely enjoyed being able to share that and listen to more of you. It's so funny because I never get quite asked the question of what does Serpent Goddess mean to me. Oh, I also want to say too, when you all are out there and you're shining your light and you're sharing who you are, your light might irritate the darkness of the inner demons that others might have, but you do you anyway. Because what has been happening is that a couple of times, these guys too, it's like, what is this guy doing being a bully on my page? Will say something like, you need to change your name because you're self-hexing yourself. I was like, what?
Mm,
Actually, no, I'm not. Actually, that shows me how limited your beliefs are to think that snakes are evil and then to come on and bring that up to
yes.
me what I need to do.
I
Like,
love that you share this because I wanted to ask you about this because I released an episode around Kundalini a few weeks ago and I
mhm.
was sharing on my reels about serpentine intelligence. And there was this woman commenting about how these are demons, how I'm working with the devil, and all these things.
Yeah,
And this used to trigger me a lot. Even up till a year ago, it would just have me shake, like be like,
yeah,
oh my God, maybe I should hide this part of me. That kind of would happen. And this was like, I think this year is the first year where I can really feel like, no, this is what I stand for. This is what I love teaching about, what I love sharing about, what I journeyed with so deeply. So I love that you bring this in. Like, you do you anyway, even if
yeah,
others like want to piss on it or like want to make a joke out of it or want
yeah.
to say that you're doing something wrong.
Or they want to be closed-minded. You know what your intentions are. You know that you're pure. I say directly on my profile, my mission is to help guide you to connect you back to source. Where does that
Mm,
seem like evil? So for you to take that and to say that all these sorts of things about that and tell me I need to go to church or read the Bible, it's like, first of all, I don't want to be a part of anything that you're a part of that's over here bullying somebody. But second of all, it's just like, whatever. Yeah, you have to. It used to initially, as I'm expanding more and more eyes are on me, that means more opportunity for potential hate. But it's like, no, you shine your light anyway. And so that
mm,
those who can resonate with your medicine, those who need your medicine, they can find you. And
yes.
that's your path to prosperity, being able to shine your light, being able to hold up your freak flag. I like to say, wave your freak flag high like Jimi Hendrix. But we wave our freak flags high so that those who resonate with the medicine can find us, and those who don't, keep it moving. You don't even have to be here. This is my space
Yes.
of the world. You don't have to be here. And so, but that's another way of conditioning to keep you small, to keep you afraid of your power, to try and
Yes.
condemn you as you're shining your light, as you're shining it and sharing it. They try to make you feel insecure, different things like that. You shine anyway. And if there's one sentence that can just really deduce everything we're saying, shine anyway. Whoever you are in your authenticity, do that. And
Mm,
know that you're protected. Don't let any of that bother you or take you off your path.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the listeners are curious about you and your work, where can they find out more about you? We'll, of course, link your Instagram profile below. Is there anything coming up for you? Anything that they can join you in or follow you on?
Yeah, I am releasing a free masterclass on Wednesday that will be recorded though. So if anyone wanted to partake in that later on, they'd still have access to that. But on Wednesday, I have a free masterclass. It's all about how to tap into your purpose and walk in it, how to really activate and walk in that, not afraid to shine that light. And I also have my life's work course or a 3-month mentorship that's happening coming up really soon. And that is all about, okay, once we figured out what it is that we want to do, how do we really implement it? What kind of systems do we need in place, from business to branding to even marketing? There are so many people telling you how to do things, like do it this way, do it that way. I'm a projector and I'm a double Taurus. And so I like to move slow. I like to move when I want to. And figuring out that there is a blueprint that you can follow that feels good to you, that you don't have to follow what anyone else is doing, and you can still reap a lot of growth, then I want to share that with others because it's my mission right now is to help activate those who might be in hiding, who know they have something to share, but are maybe afraid to or not sure how to, because I was there. I was
Mm,
afraid. Just last year, I was still in hiding a little bit. And the moment
mm,
I decided to turn that all the way on, my social media account just expanded and opportunities came left and right. And so I want to help activate those next wave of leaders as well to shine in their light, to help balance out some of this that's happening around. I want to see more authenticity. So that's what's coming up
beautiful.
immediately. And I have a 5-month mentorship as well that will be in the fall. But you can find out all about all those things on theserpentgoddess.com.
Amazing. I will make sure that we link this below this episode as well.
I really, really enjoyed this conversation. It's a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. I feel like, I mean, we just met, but I feel like I know you, like your journey
Likewise.
feels very familiar, your vibe feels very familiar. And thank you so much for bringing your beautiful wisdom today.
Thank you for being you. Thank you for shining your light. And thank you for, even inviting me. I see you, I honor you, and I'm so thankful.
Did you receive any inspiration, motivation, or powerful breakthroughs by listening to this episode? Then please share this episode by taking a screenshot and tagging me in your stories at nicole.nima.costeres. I would love to celebrate you, share you in my stories, and it would mean so much to have my work reach more powerful, passionate women like you. Thank you so much, and looking forward to see you next week.